Hi, all. The book I'm talking about today is The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. This autobiography, written when Helen was in her early 20s and published in 1903, tells the story of her early childhood all the way through her beginnings at Radcliffe College. Helen was born June 27, 1880, in Tuscumbia, a little town in northern Alabama. She had a nearly fatal illness when she was 19 months old, which left her both deaf and blind. Although she and her family found ways to communicate, given the advice of Alexander Graham Bell, her parents hired a teacher from the Perkins Institute for the Blind in Boston. That teacher was Anne Sullivan. About Anne Sullivan, Helen states, "When she came, everything about me breathed of love and joy and was full of meaning. She has never since let pass an opportunity to point out the beauty that is in everything, nor has she ceased trying in thought and action and example to make my life sweet and useful. It was my teacher's genius, her quick sympathy, her loving tact, which made the first years of my education so beautiful." Working with Anne Sullivan, Helen learned to read and write in Braille and to use a form of sign language or finger spelling, which she understood by touch. She also read lips by placing her hands on people's faces. And as time went on, she learned to speak verbally and sometimes needed translation from Anne Sullivan or another interpreter to be understood. Helen's perseverance and passion for learning, growing, and communicating drives this story of her early years. As a former special education teacher, I was struck by the advocacy of her family, as well as the supports and accommodations they were able to acquire, which allowed Helen to learn and communicate so powerfully and to give so much of herself to the world. Aspects of this book that I loved most are that Helen acknowledges her own privileges that enabled her to access such a unique and rich education. And she shares her concern for folks living in poverty who did not have the resources she did. Looking at her life beyond this book, Helen later became an activist. She joined the Socialist Party in 1909, supported strikes, walked picket lines, gave lecture tours, and wrote articles for publications like The Liberator. She noticed a close relationship between disability and poverty. She was a pacifist, a suffragist, a birth control advocate, a supporter of the NAACP, and a co-founder of the ACLU. The story of my life really highlights the foundation and cultivation of what Helen Keller's life would become and mean in later years. I highly recommend reading this autobiographical story of this exceptional woman.